Welcome to Da Vinci's Discourse, where the minds of today's most innovative entrepreneurs are unveiled and explored. And my name is Kyle Campbell, your guide on this journey into the depths of the entrepreneurial psyche. So sit back, relax, and get ready to dive into the minds of the greats. This is Da Vinci's Discourse. If somebody were to ask you, let's say at a coffee shop, bar, or whatever, who you are, what would you tell them?
Depends on the day, maybe.
On a good day.
I'm I'm a mom. I'm a mom of two teenagers. Actually, one's almost an adult at this point, just about to turn 18. I'm also a business owner of 25 years since 1999 that I've run my own companies. So very much consider myself a business owner, a creator, an entrepreneur, and such. Yeah, and I'm just me. Like that might be a bit of a strange answer in some ways, but
No, I
definitely
get it.
true.
I get it. I love it. It's cool. It's an interesting route you took. Let's get into the what you do for a living then. I like how you didn't answer it as what you do. So let's shift it up now. If somebody asked you what you do, the classic question when you meet somebody, what do you usually say?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have two divisions of my company. On one side, we train and certify online business managers. And so I've run that training and certification now since 2009, almost 15 years. And on the other side, the other division of my company is where I help other experts, thought leaders, authors, coaches, et cetera, create their own certification and training programs.
So what's the benefit behind that? Let's say I've got a course that's common in entrepreneurial practice these days. You find an expertise and then you sell the knowledge at least as one extra revenue stream.
Yeah.
What's the benefit to them starting a certification as opposed to doing it without that?
Yeah, there's a couple of benefits. It's very much, I like to call certification an empowerment model. So it definitely is distinct from a quote unquote regular training in the sense of you are giving people permission to use your framework, your IP, your templates, your et cetera, your assets in a very particular way to help them expand and grow their own business or, to work through their own work if they do work in corporate and such. And so the benefit in particular for small business owners is a couple of things. A lot of my clients come to me when they are looking for ways to continue to grow and expand that don't necessarily require so much of them anymore. And
Yeah.
so a
Mhm.
lot of times, and there's different paths we can take in business. There's different models that can help navigate that space. But part of what's beautiful about certification is it's shifting from, hey, it's no longer just me doing this thing out in the world. It's like now there's other people out there who are also trained, tested, and certified to be able to also do this thing in the world. And so it's a way to kind of get ourselves out of being the hub of the business. And even this can even be true I do a lot of work with folks in the coaching world, in the business life coaching community, and even folks who are running, say, bigger, we talk a lot in that community around the one to many model. So you might have a coaching group or a coaching program or something like that, where it's a one to many model. That's great. We can still expand our reach and serve more people. But at the end of the day, it's still on my shoulders to carry the
Mhm.
weight of everything. A lot of my clients, too, are very mission driven in what they do. So they've created a framework. They've created a methodology. They know what works. They know what works really well. And they're also coming from a place of, hey, this needs to be out in the world in bigger and better ways. And it needs to be out in the world in a way beyond what I can just do on my own. And also, too, frankly, for some people, and this can be very true, is sometimes we've created something, it's amazing, it's awesome, it works, and we're tired of it, right? It's like, okay, I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah. On to the
necessarily,
next thing. Yeah, shiny object syndrome for sure. Uh-huh.
yeah, and just even, especially those of us who've been around for a while in our businesses, like just because we created something successful and powerful and impactful doesn't mean that we have to keep doing it all the
Mm.
time. Like I
Mm.
will have clients come to me who have created amazing programs, they've got amazing frameworks and methodologies. They themselves want to move on to focusing on something a bit different now, but what they've created still has a lot of value. And so it's looking at how can this continue on without me, so to
Yes,
speak, and
yes.
so
Mm.
that I can be freed up for being able to focus on and doing different things as well too. I think that one's an interesting one because sometimes it's not, in the entrepreneur space or the small business space, in particular the expertise space, like those of us who are building a business around expertise, it's almost like, oh no, I can't go out and tell people that I'm bored of doing what I'm doing,
Ah,
or I
mm.
don't want to do this anymore. Like that almost
Mhm.
sounds like, ooh, I don't want to share that. Like, how dare we go out and do that? But I mean,
Yeah.
in the reality too, especially if we're very creative and visionary type folks, yeah, I just don't think we're meant to do the same thing forever
Right.
necessarily.
Right.
Yeah,
And passing on the torch, there's a legacy play to that too. And do you
totally.
look at yeah, and right, exactly. Do you look at this as a franchising opportunity as opposed to a passing the torch, whereas expanding instead of replacing, or how do you look at the two as different or the same?
Yeah, I mean it's along the lines of franchising, more licensing than franchising. So
Right. Yeah.
certification ultimately is about giving people a license to take and utilize what you've created in a specific way. It actually is important to make sure that you're not tipping into franchise territory, and that's a whole like legal side of things to know and be aware of from that perspective. But it definitely part of the other one of the other things I love about the certification model right now, and again, can be true for licensing or certification, is especially because how long have you had your business, Kyle? How long have you been
Um,
doing?
since 2016, I've been working with AI and automation and
Yeah,
marketing. And so yeah, so
yeah,
what is that? Like 8 years now? Damn. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like I feel like in for a period of time, especially in the online space, the only opportunity or the main opportunity we had to create a business was, okay, I need to go figure out my thing. I need to go figure out what I'm doing, my expertise, what I'm offering, how I'm offering it, who it's for. And that can take a good 2 to 3 years to really figure out, right? It's like, okay, it can take a chunk of time. Let me try this. Let me try that. Oh, a bit of this. Oh, a bit of that. That worked. That didn't work, and so on. Like that was very much the reality of the online space when I started working online, which was literally 1999. So almost
Wow.
20, well, 25 years ago, 25 years ago in September. Um, and so, whereas now, part of what I also love on the receiving end of the certification or licensing model is, instead of me having to take that 2 to 3 years to figure out what the heck my business is and what I'm doing, it's similar-ish to a franchise in the sense of, hey, I could get licensed or I could get certified in this particular methodology, this framework that's proven to work. And then I can fast track the way that I'm building my business and fast track my own success out there based on being able to go through that process of
Yeah.
certification or licensing. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And plus it gives you authority, like your clients. I mean, if you're licensed, you can say, especially if you add a fancy name to it, which I love. You add a fancy
Yeah.
name and then they say, "Oh, I'm certified in quantum computing." And it's like
Yeah.
the quantum computing program. It's like if you put the in front of it, then it sounds like prestigious. You could have it sound some authority generating just by hearing it and saying that you're a part of this exclusive community.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's something to that, right? So let's say I've got an expertise. Let's say I've developed a framework and let's say I'm tired of it, or even if I'm not tired of it, I just realize that there's way more opportunity than I myself can tap into. Where do we
Yeah.
start in terms of being able to not franchise it, but license it, have other people leverage the systems that I've developed over the last 8 years, let's say? Where do we begin with that?
Yeah. There's a couple of prerequisites that I mean, I take a pretty firm stand on these as far as being ready to create a certification program. So one of them is having created your own proprietary framework, methodology, IP, et cetera. We want it to be our own, of course. I did have somebody ask me once, they're like, I read this great book and I want to create a certification program around it. And I'm like, but you didn't write the book. So it's
Yeah.
not yours. You can't go do that.
Uh-huh.
It needs to be our own stuff. And then second, too, is to have proven the viability of it. And this is a piece that, and I get it. I like to move quickly. I'm not a patient person. This is the piece that sometimes we want to skip is you need to go prove this framework, right? And I take a stand on you have utilized this framework either in your business with clients or in your work if you're employed in corporate or consulting or whatever it is that you've utilized and proven this framework for at least 3 years before you try to certify people. Because to your point too, Kyle, about the authority piece of it, like what makes a certification good? What makes, because I mean, really anybody can go out and create a certification. And just to be, I've seen certifications online. This kind of cracks me up. Like I've seen, hey, get certified as a coach for $7. I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
That
not worth
might
the
be a
paper
little,
it's written on. Yeah, like what's
yeah,
that
I'm kind of like, I
mean?
don't know. That seems a little much, right? And again, I don't know anything about that program in particular, but just, it's not hard. Like anything anybody could throw together and say, here's a certification. But part of the validity of the certification is, okay, like I've lived this, I've proven it. I've worked with clients. I've built my business around this, like whatever the promise is going to be from the certification. We want to make sure that we've lived that. And so the first step really is, hey, am I ready for this? Like, do I actually have these things in place? Because again, somebody might have created a great framework, but if they haven't spent the 3 years yet to prove it, then that's my recommended next step is like, okay, go prove it for 3 years. Go out and really do that first. And then let's talk again kind of thing with the certification model. Once, if we've got those two key things in place, like the proprietary IP, the framework, and it's proven, then it becomes a matter too of making sure that this model does fit long-term goals for people. Because again, there's so many ways to build a business. There's so many ways to be successful. I always say a little bit tongue in cheek, like, I mean, really, certification is not for everybody by any means. I might try to talk somebody out of it before I'll talk them into it, which might sound strange to say in a way, but
No,
all
I like
from the
it. Interesting
perspective,
sales technique in and of itself too. How do you know it's right
well,
for you? How do you know if it's a good
yeah,
idea to do this?
well, some people, and this is what I mean by that too. It's like it's an investment. There's a chunk of work to be done to create a good certification. And again, that could be said for any type of business model too. But I've had people come and say, like, oh, I really want to create a certification, but I don't want to put any effort into it. Or I had somebody one time I had a conversation with along the lines of, I've created this amazing IP. I don't want to do anything with it anymore. Can we turn it into a certification? It's like, yeah, that's certainly an option. But she didn't have the time or energy to like actually create the certification, if that, or desire, I should say, even to actually create the certification. It's like we need to be really tapped into that. There's also an aspect from a business model perspective of when you create a certification, you are in essence creating your own competition. And
Yeah.
so being aware of that, being okay with that. I know for me personally, with my certified online business manager program, when I started that, when I launched that program back in 2009, April 2009 was the first time we ran that program. And I had at that point been working as an online business manager for 6 years already. So I had done the work, proven the model, et cetera. I'd done all of that. When I started training and certifying people to become online business managers, I personally stopped working as an OBM because I didn't want to be in competition with the people I was training. And frankly, I didn't want to work with clients directly anymore. Like I was
Yeah, fair
just
enough.
tired
Things
of
change,
being the
right?
OBM.
Things
Yeah, that
change.
was the
Yeah.
more
You could look at the competition you're creating as potential collaboration instead of the
Well,
competition
it's,
word, right? So you can actually look at
yeah,
it as though you're creating opportunities that for partnership and being able to leverage the results that other people get with
yeah.
your systems and work out some sort of a profit sharing model, where they can give you leads, or you could share leads, or have the list sharing, or create content for one another, and have all kinds of opportunities to
Yeah.
create. What is that? Is that
There,
a? I got distracted here for a sec. What's the bird that's next to you? I just caught my
oh,
attention for
that's
some
a
reason.
raven.
It's
My
a
sister is
raven.
a wildlife
Oh,
photographer, so
okay,
that's
okay,
one of her
interesting.
photos.
I don't know
Yeah.
why it caught my attention. Something to do with death. The symbolism
Death
of
and
death.
rebirth.
There you go.
But yeah,
Rebirth
exactly to that point.
of the certification.
Yeah, exactly. I think to your point though, Kyle, like that's that part of like, how is this going to fit into my current business model and my future
Yeah.
business model? Because some people, we've talked about the option, they might have all the elements of creating a certification, but they're like, nah, I don't want to create my own competitor, so to
Mhm.
speak. It's like, okay, then don't, like that's totally fine. But others, to your point, I mean, I have clients that, for example, they have an agency and they work with a very specific type of client. They work with a specific type of, their ideal clients are a certain type of person, but they have more and more people coming to them that want and need help, or they have people coming to them that don't fit their ideal client avatar, but they don't necessarily have anybody to refer them to. So
Mhm.
you can certify people to be able to, send them referrals and other people. Other times people will continue to do what they're doing and just know that there's plenty of work out there for everyone. So yeah, to your point, it doesn't always have to be or feel like competition, but there is an awareness of that. Like, be real, are you okay? Giving people all your IP and knowledge and wisdom, and maybe not all of it, but literally licensing them and certifying them to do what you do. And also, how does that fit into the long-term vision for your own company too?
Mhm.
Because the beauty of certification, again, using myself as an example, and our certified OBM training, we've been doing it now for 15 years. We have an association for our certified OBMs. And as we've built things over time, like in the beginning, very involved, doing the sales, leading the trainings, all of that. Over time, I got help with sales and enrollment. 5, almost 6 years ago now, actually. That was 2018. I stopped leading the training, and now I have licensed trainers who teach the certified OBM program. So I'm not even doing the training anymore. We have our association that is the home of our certified OBMs that people, are members of, and we continue to support people there. All of that, I spend very little time on it at this point, frankly. Like it brings in recurring revenue because there is a membership on the back end. And, as we've built things over time, it's like I might spend a couple hours a week, give or take,
Nothing wrong with
on
that.
that business.
I like it.
Um, yeah, which is a nice, and it's very possible with the certification model, right? Like, again, it's not going to necessarily happen that way tomorrow, so to speak, but there's a lot of longevity and legacy that come into play with this model. And at this point, too, for me, it's like there is a lot of legacy around it, meaning, hey, this certain, being an online business manager, period, let alone being a certified online business manager, like that's a very, a pretty well established known thing out there now, which that wouldn't have been the case if I hadn't gone the certification route with it. There's no way. Like it would, if it had just been me doing my thing, it wouldn't have had as far of a reach or an impact that it's had. So we do want to look through that lens of, okay, how is this really going to, how is it going to serve me as the owner of my business and what I want and where I want to spend my time and energy? How does it serve my goals in the long run, an exit plan in various ways? How is it going to serve the people that I'm going to certify? What does it allow them to create? So we want to be, that's the piece. When I start working with people on their programs, we take a really, really good look at that aspect of things to make sure that the way the program is being built is going to fulfill all of those things.
Right. Okay.
And
Fair
then
enough. What about the payment
yeah,
structures? How do you usually structure the income on it? You said there's a membership on the back end for the recurring revenue
yeah.
with hands off, which is awesome. How do you do that in your company, even for the business managers? And then how do we structure it?
Yeah, I'm a really big believer too in building the renewal. People are paying for renewals on the back end. So the exact structure of what that looked like can vary from program to program, but there's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, I mean, payment wise, you pay up front for the training and the certification, and then you pay some kind of renewal fee that will usually be yearly. In some cases, people have programs where it's monthly that you're paying. Like, it really depends on what is the program, what are they getting, what level of support, et cetera. If certifications are attached to software and things like that, then that might look a little different. But I'm a really big believer in having some kind of renewal that people are paying at least every year. From a business model perspective, everybody talks about, recurring revenue or monthly recurring revenue, like MRR is a big thing for a lot of folks. I mean, it's a good thing to have recurring revenue, and for me over time, with our OBM certification, as we've had more members over time, that means that there's more of a recurring revenue that happens every year. Likewise, too, whereas, and all of that to be said, that there's a fair number of certifications out there that don't do that, right? It's like you pay up front for the training and the certification, and once you're certified, that's it. You don't ever have to pay anything again. And that can be fine, right? But I think there's some missed opportunity around that. There's also some missed opportunity around being able to continually support and engage with the people that you've certified.
That's a good.
Um,
Yeah, because that's my
yeah,
next
because
question
and
is like, what if you don't have something like a software where you can continue to license out, even with a membership site or something? What if it's just information? So what's
yeah,
stopping somebody from just taking the information, paying once, and then dropping
yeah,
out, not paying you the recurring revenue because they got what they needed? What are they getting for the recurring per year? Is it your support? Is it
yeah.
the ongoing
Well,
updates to the
and
system?
yeah, and that'll vary again from program to program. Like the baseline of what they're getting is the license and the permission to continue to use whatever it is you've given them, right? So that can
Hmm.
be specific assets, that can be templates, that can be methodologies, that can be different
Okay.
ways of delivering and showing up with things. That can absolutely be branding and trademarks. Like in our case, because we've trademarked certified OBM globally, if somebody cancels their membership in our association, they're no longer allowed to call themselves a certified OBM, right? So
Interesting.
there's, a certified whatever it is title that comes into play. And so there's different ways that that can be structured in that sense. And there's also different levels of support that you can give someone. Like it could be as simple as pay a yearly fee to renew the license to use this stuff, right? Whereas it could be things like you're paying a fee where it gives you support, it gives you these additional things, you get more training, you get access to this, you get access, like there can be all kinds of ways that you can structure some of that. Another aspect around the why I'm a big fan of the renewals too is there's a quality assurance aspect to creating a certification. So another big concern that people have when they're exploring the certification option is, well, what if I certify somebody and they suck, right?
Yeah,
Which
they
there's a
tarnish your
reputation
name.
risk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same with
yeah,
franchising, it's the same risk, like with the early
exactly.
McDonald's. I watched the Founder last night. It's an awesome movie, and we were talking about movies before we hopped on the call. I watched the
Yeah,
Founder, and the first McDonald's franchises that opened up, people were selling burritos and fried chicken, and so
yeah,
it's the same thing. It's tarnishing the brand name, tarnishing the certification. So
yeah.
how do you manage that? It's an interesting hazard to avoid.
Yeah, there's a couple of things with that. So first of all, you want to be, this again comes back to knowing your framework and having a very solid and proven framework. So part of it is, okay, I know what this framework is. We know it works. That's what we're teaching and supporting people with. You want to have really clear agreements with people, and agreement, not just legal agreements, that's definitely important as a part of this, but also, and legal agreements can lay things out very clearly around I mean, they do need to lay things out very clearly. Here's what you can do, here's what you can't do, here's what it is, here's what it's not, etc. But also the ethics side of things. Like we have an ethics pledge that our certified OBMs take once they become certified. And that too it's less about the skill set and more about like how they're showing up in service of people. So with all of these things in place, like you do want to have a solid, how do you make sure that people are going to quote unquote do it right? Like you want to have a solid training. And again, I'll say this with all the love in my heart, there's a lot of training that's not that great out there, right? Like you want to approach certification in a very purposeful way that does actually enhance the learning experience for people. You want to have a solid testing process for them. Like what is the testing process so that they earn their certification and you know that they know their stuff. You've seen that they've proven that they know their stuff. And then you want to make sure to have the agreements and such as well, so that if and where something does happen, where somebody doesn't represent you well or something happens, that you have some kind of recourse, something you can do about that. Which of course we don't want that to happen, but at the same time, it's very important for that to be a part of this too. When I started my certification years ago, like I mean, that's part of why I love working with people on certifications now, because I basically was making it up as I went years ago, right? It's like the first round, like nobody signed an agreement about anything. So it was like, okay, go do whatever the heck you want in whatever way, shape, or form. And if you go out there and you suck, well, too bad for me. There's nothing I can do about it. Like it was just, it really, thankfully that did not happen by any means with those early folks that got certified. But it's really important that we look through the lens of, I'm protecting this brand, I'm protecting this IP, I'm protecting my reputation in all of this, and doing to the best of our ability, preparing people to go out there and do great work. And at the same time, knowing that we have an option or a way to be able to approach a situation if it's not
Hmm.
working out for somebody.
It's an
Yeah.
interesting opportunity for course creator, for example, because if they've got
Yeah.
the course already, they can turn it into an ongoing continuity program by adding the support ongoing updates and all the features that you would say that you said earlier, that you can make it an
Yeah.
ongoing process. And so if you got a course, then you can rewind and look at all the reasons why you can make it an ongoing program if you transition it into a certification. And so when it comes down to that, I mean, it's interesting. What are some steps that you can take to actually certify? Let's say you've got a course, let's say you've got a proprietary process with AI or whatever you do for your company. How do you go
Yeah.
about, and you're okay with creating competition and maybe you look at it as collaboration, whatever. What's the
Yeah.
next step in terms of actually cementing and solidifying the certification? We name it? Do we, how do you look at the process? Can you walk me through
Yeah.
that?
You want to be looking first at the who and the what of it. So and those two kind of go hand in hand, but the who is, who are the people I want to certify, right? Like who's actually a fit to be successful.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast, and I want to let you know that I've got a free book that you can get if you want to tap into more of these resources. And you can get that for free at kylesbook.com. Back to the podcast.
With this, a lot of times too, and again, this can happen in various types of offers as well, but a certification is not a program where you just say, hey, anybody who wants to be certified, come on in,
Right. It takes
kind
away,
of thing.
well,
It's like,
right. That's a huge
yeah,
lack of opportunity because it takes away, like we appreciate things we have to earn. A doctor
yeah,
it's got status in our society because it's difficult to earn and not a lot of people have it. And so you take that same framework, that same methodology and take it into your licensing and your
yeah.
framework with doing this, which is
Well,
you got to earn it. If everybody can get it for
you have to earn
$7
it.
to have a certification in coaching, then it's like, but the thing is you still have the perception. The clients don't exactly know if you paid $7 to get it like that, or if you have spent a year training and you're following specific methodologies that have been proven to work, it's hard to get that message across. So walk me through step by step how we go about, first of all, creating it and then being able to get that message across and helping our clients who we're certifying fully leverage the certification when it comes to them doing it.
Yeah, that who is that first piece of the who is really important in the sense that you want to know, you want to be purposeful with here's the prerequisites to be able to come into this program, and here's what makes somebody not a fit,
Mm, mm,
right? Because if we certify somebody who, again, this is a common issue that'll come up in certifications, is I always like to say that their success is ultimately your success, right? Like the success of the people I certify is ultimately my success and the success of my program. So if I'm certifying people and they're coming out the other end and they're not able to be successful with what they've become certified in, then something's missing along the way in this process. So the who is really, were they a good fit for this or not? Right? Like there's people who flat out are not a good fit to become a certified OBM, and if they're not a good fit, like they're just, it's not in their aptitude or their interest or whatever, and we go ahead and certify them, it almost doesn't matter how great the rest of everything else is if it's just not a fit for them. The what is being really clear about what they're getting, what they're not getting, what they're able to do, what they're not able to do with what you're certifying them in. A common area, or I don't even know if I want to call it a mistake, but maybe a bit of a trap of sorts that can happen with the what is we try to download everything we know about everything ever
mm,
into our certification program, right? The
mm.
best certifications are the ones that really fit that less is more methodology. So if you're using AI as an example, it's like, here's our methodology to utilize AI in this very specific way.
Yes.
That's
Mm.
a different type of certification than here's everything you could ever do under the sun in any way, shape, or form with AI.
Right, and
And
that's of service to people too. I mean, people appreciate that because there's no beating around the bush. You got to go through 18 hours of courses just to find how to do a step-by-step process. It's relatively simple.
yeah,
Plus, it opens up the opportunity for upsells down the road. For example, a
yep,
bachelor's leads
yep,
to a master's to a PhD. It's the same kind of series of process. You can start with the MVP, the minimum viable product, at the beginning, upsell them later to a more advanced version of it if they appreciate that and they're getting good success with it. And then at
yeah,
the end, you go up the ladder like that, up the stair steps. And then
yeah.
that's good marketing to the turning people away too. I like that aspect of it. Instead of
Well,
letting
and it,
everybody in, you're saying this isn't good for these people. And that tells the people
yep,
that it is good for, oh, this is really for me. And they buy a lot easier because of that. So there's a lot of
yeah.
psychology at play here. I like it.
Well, and even it is making that shift from like, hey, just because somebody likes it doesn't mean they're a fit, which again, especially in our online marketing, whatever space of like, woo, as big as we can and get as many as we can in some ways.
Yeah.
It really is, because that's the thing. Like if they're coming out the other end, they weren't a fit. That's a problem. Like they're not successful. They don't represent the brand well. Like it's not a good thing to certify people that are fundamentally not a fit. And I remember like the teaching too much when I did my first round of the OBM certification back in 2009. It was literally me teaching everything I knew about anything. Like I look
Yeah.
back on that
Yeah.
program and I'm like, phew, like no wonder that was so, and it was so the more we teach, the more we try to squeeze in, the more work it is for us to create,
Yeah.
first and
For them
foremost,
to
and the
consume.
more
Yeah.
that we're expecting people to learn and take and be successful with, which puts a heck of a lot of pressure on them on the other end too. Like as over the years, as our program evolved, it became very clear where it was like, oh, that piece doesn't need to be there anymore. That actually doesn't
Mm.
apply here. Let's take that out. Like this piece, let's refine this. So, like we learned over the years to really do that. And so, and to your point too, Kyle, if you have a whole lot of stuff that can be turned into certifications, great. Break them out into different certifications, have a level 1, 2, 3. I have clients that have done exactly that. Like, hey, this first round of certification, level 1 is about this. Then once they've completed that, level 2 is another option. It's about this piece and etc. So we can certainly do that, but we want to be very, very clear and take that less is more approach to like what are they actually getting and what are they going to be certified in. And when those two things are clear, like when we're really clear on the who, when we're really clear on the what, then we can look at the other structural elements, like what is the pricing model going to be. And again, like we talked about, definitely you want to have some upfront kind of fee that they're paying. And I'm a huge fan of the renewals, at least yearly renewals. What is the training structure going to be? And, again, I'll say this with all the love in my heart, because I know people out there take this approach. An evergreen program does not make a good certification training,
Why not?
in my opinion. There's a lot, and we actually learned this. We went through a big overhaul with our OBM certification a few years ago based on this too. And it was based on feedback that we were getting from our students and such at the time, that people don't learn just by watching a video, right? Like adult learning best practices. And I learned this. Her name's Dr. Carrie Dr. Carrie Graham, and she's an adult learning specialist that we worked with, who helped us with a lot of updates and such that we made to our own training at the time. And I just remember her saying to us at the time, where she's like, yeah, watching a video does not do anything for a person. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? Like,
It depends on the person, though, because
well,
the
it
same
depends
thing
on the
is for
person,
children
but
too. I mean, like look at school. Like some kid will learn fantastically by watching the teacher and watching a
yeah.
presentation, whereas another one
Well,
needs
and
to be
it's
able to
not
do it tactically, or
it's
so
it's less
depends.
about whether you're a visual or an auditory or whatever learner, but it's more from like an adult learning best practices perspective. um, we want to be able to take what we're taking in, but then we also need to apply it. It's like there's the practice elements, there's discussion, there's like how are we actually integrating and then starting to utilize this information. So if it's just a video, here's a video, take a multiple choice test and then done. Like, does that person, have they actually integrated that? Do they
Or have they just
actually know and
memorized
understand it?
it? Right. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fair. And the community
Yeah.
is a big part of it too. You look at
Community can be a big
courses.
part for sure.
Exactly. And that's actually becoming increasingly important with online courses, for example. The community
Totally.
is a major portion of it. And then of course the
Yeah.
implementation, and then the combination of the two, the information and the community,
Yep.
encouraging the implementation, which is so
And the
kind of one, two,
practice.
three, which is the trifecta, the holy trinity of
Yep.
certification. So I love it. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
we want the training part for sure. And that's not to say don't have a training video. Like, of course we do,
Right.
right? And it's not to say you have to lead every training call live or anything like that. Like, we don't do that either. Things are pre-recorded, but it is a mix of like the training, like here's the information. It's a mix of the practical application of that information. Because again, adult learning best practices, like adults learn when we get to take and apply what we're learning. Like, how does this apply to me? How does this work in my situation? What comes up for me here? How does this apply to like my past experience or whatever that is? It's really important for us to be able to, that's kind of that community piece you're talking about as well, right? We want to have some practical practice aspects to it, and then like the community, the discussion, etc., part of it too. Like those three pieces together can make for a really, really strong training experience for any kind of training. That can apply to anything and not just certification. But I think certification, because we are the actual act, like what makes something a certification versus what makes it quote unquote just a training, so to
Right.
speak,
Mm.
is the fact that, okay, there's a testing process, and then you're giving them your reputation, you're giving them your branding, you're giving them authority to use these things, you're giving them stuff that
Mm.
they can go out publicly and use under your brand and under your name. So the testing process is really where people need to show up. It's like, how are they going to demonstrate that they actually know what you've been teaching them? Right? How are they going to demonstrate that to you? And if the training process is not that solid up front, or if it's, again, with all the love in my heart, like just a series of evergreen videos, and then you're expecting them to do a test, it's like, okay, do they actually know? Have they had opportunities to apply this? Have they had conversations in community? Are they a part of, just learning beyond watching a video? It's like, do they actually know what you need them to know, and can they demonstrate that then in a way where you feel confident and trust that you can put your brand on them, put your
Right.
stamp of approval, so to speak, on them out there. And so it's really important to look at that training structure and make sure that it's built around those adult learning best practices, being able to role play, being able to have discussions, being able to practice things. Like all of that will deepen the learning, because what you want to have too with the certification training is, as people are coming to the certification process, like the testing process, they should be feeling pretty confident and ready to take that test, right? Like, oh yeah, okay, I do feel
Yeah.
like I know what we all might have a little bit of test anxiety. I think to some degree we all have that based on our school system and how
Conditioning,
we're raised
yeah.
and such.
Especially as
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, man, no kidding. But
Oh yeah.
this leads on to something important, which is the actual completion of the training and of the implementation in the real world, hopefully, to be
Yeah.
able to get the certification. Because if you look at I mean, it's dismal the amount of people who buy a course as opposed to how many people complete it. I think it's like on average, most people never even log into the membership area to take a single training
Totally.
lesson. I think the
Yeah.
completion rate is somewhere around like 4 or 5% or something on average in the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial space. And so, how do you get people to really take the course to begin with, to be able to implement it, to be able to have the test, to be able to have the certification? What are some ways that you get
Yeah.
people into it?
It's kind of interesting. I would say it's not even like how do you get people to do that, but it's more around what it is they're looking for before they even come into the program. So just as an example with the OBM certification, when people like our completion rates are like, I don't know the exact number, but it's like 90% and up from that,
How?
right? I mean, like
How?
majority, by far majority of people they complete the training. Not everybody completes the testing process. Like we do have a little bit of drop off between completion of training and then completion of the test to actually become certified. There is a little bit of drop off there as well. But people are coming into the program wanting to be a certified OBM. So I like to say
Right.
it's an identity sale. It's
I
not
love
a
that. Yes.
just another, again, I say this with all the love of my heart, because I sell just another training program and various things too, right? But it's not like, oh my gosh, that looks great. Let me take that training on, AI stuff, or let me go sign up for this training on messaging, or let me go sign up. Like, I can't tell you how many trainings I've bought thinking they would
Yeah.
be great and like with
Yeah.
good intention. But yeah, I never completed them because
Right.
they actually weren't that important, right? Like it might have been in a moment, it might have been in ooh, you get caught up in some really great selling and marketing, and all right, I bought this thing, and then later be like, meh, maybe it's not my thing or whatever. But certification, especially when done well, and when you're making sure you're bringing in the right people for the right reasons, they know exactly what they're getting. Um, is when people are coming in, again, it can either be the identity sale of like, I want to be a
Yeah.
certified OBM,
Yeah.
and then they go off and become a certified OBM. Or even if it's not about being a thing, like sometimes a certification would be, it can be around like a specific, say, here's a specific approach to planning, right? You might get certified or licensed in a certain planning methodology. That doesn't mean it has, and I'm already, say, a business coach, but I go get certified in this.
Hmm.
That may not become my identity per se,
Right.
but it
Yeah.
becomes a tool of like, oh, now I can really take and use this to make money with, in my business, or to support my clients at another level, or it fills a gap of some kind that I really have in there. So I think the fact that certification, like it's as close to being a business in a box slash franchise without actually being that for people. It's a way to fast track to get to where they want to go and to get to what they want to create for themselves in their own business, compared to a training that, may or may not fill that same need of sorts for them. It's interesting you asked that though, Kyle. I hadn't thought of that in a little while. Like it is, there's a huge difference in the completion rate for certification trainings, for sure.
So really what it comes down to is the identity that they step into. It's the marketing at the
Yep.
end of the day. Like for example,
Yeah.
I create webinars, and the goal with the webinar is to instill the beliefs that align with the identity that's in line with buying. So I look at it as
Yeah.
what are the beliefs they have? What beliefs do they need? How do they identify right now? And how can I get them to step into the new identity with the new beliefs so that purchasing and hopefully completing and actually implementing whatever I'm selling is a part of that natural fit with their new identity. And so, how
Yeah.
do you go about instilling that identity so that when they are in the membership program or whatever it might be, that they actually do want to consume the content and they actually do want to go out there and implement it? What's your marketing like to be able to get them to step into that role?
There's a book, Becoming an Online Business Manager. Um, I wrote this book 2008. I think it's actually funny. I wrote this book before I started the certification because I thought I'll write a book.
Mm.
People can go read the book and become an OBM. Bye. But then after I wrote the book, people were very much like, oh, we want more. And that's what turned into, that's what birthed the certification training. But part of what this book is about, I always like to say this book will clearly, if you read the book, it's like, you're going to know, yes, I want to become an OBM or no, I don't. Kind of thing, right? Like it's going to be very, yes, this is for me, or heck no, no thanks, that's not for me. And so I think, especially from that identity perspective, if we're looking through the lens of it being an identity sale or an identity offer, it really is tapping into like you were saying, who do people want to be? What are their beliefs? What's important to them? And then like, how does your program fulfill that for people as well too? Because the best certifications out there, they do have a strong identity piece even on the front end, but also on the back end as well too.
What do you mean by that?
Well, hey, like I'm proud to be a certified X, right?
Okay.
I'm proud to be a
Hmm.
part of this community.
Right.
Again, ties into the renewals and the continuity and all of that too, right? The
Mm-hmm.
community, not just on the training on the front end, but the community on the back end. Like
Yeah.
that identity piece becomes very important because, I know for me, I suspect for you too, Kyle, like I'm a pretty, visionary, creative, whatever person. I like to create new things, but not everybody is wired that way, right? Like not everybody's meant to go create their own thing, create their own programs. Not everybody's a visionary. Not everybody's I'm going to go become this thought leader and all this other kind of stuff. It's like, no, like the people who come into our OBM certification, for the most part, they're operations minded people,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
they're not looking, they're behind the scenes, they're not front of the stage, they're, taking care of business. They don't want to be on the stage. They don't want to be seen as thought leaders or experts. They want to be experts for sure, but they don't want to be like the face of or creating things and such too, right? So again, because we know who our people are as they're coming in,
Hmm.
that's part of what makes it a fit for them too. And we know for our OBMs, um, there's so much again out there that's all about be the coach, be the face, be the whatever, be on Instagram, be doing reels, be, whatever, be showing your face all the time. It's like, well, what if I don't want to do that? That's not the kind of business I want to build, right? Like, what are the options for me if I'm not that quote unquote typical, entrepreneur you might read about in a magazine or on a blog or whatever, seeing videos these days? It's just like, what are the options for me? Oh, hey, this really fits who I am and what I
Hmm.
want to be.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
looking through that lens of, again, it even kind of comes back to like, who are your people that this is a real fit for? If I was trying to sell, hey, go become an OBM to coaches, that would suck. Like people
Right.
who want to be coaches or who are better suited to be coaches, or they want to be out on stage and they want to be whatever and all of that. It just wouldn't be a fit
Hmm.
for them,
Yeah.
right? It wouldn't be a fit for them. So then that would cause problems because they might think they want it and then they come out the other end and they don't actually want it, and all kinds of stuff. So we do want to know who's a fit for what we're looking at here, what we want to create too, and who can be successful with it.
Right, which is important for the continuity basis too. There's a huge shift, and I love how this tailors in with the shift as well. Like 5 years ago, whatever, it would be a course that you would buy. That was super
Yep.
prevalent. And now it's moving towards the implementation and the community aspect of it. Like
Yes.
school.com, school.com.
Yep.
It's not just the course, it's the community that you're buying into. Most people might not even take the course, but everybody wants to be a part of something. And
Yeah.
that can be used in all kinds of ways. I mean, there are wars that are created because of that exact same psychological instinct that we all share. It's deep, it's powerful. And so you're tapping
Yeah.
into something like that at a deep level. And so there's something that you're tapping into at a lot of different facets here. And I think it all comes together into an interesting kind of cohesive unit that is a marketing powerhouse if you position it right in the minds of the people that are a right fit for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like how you're not selling to everybody. You're only choosing the people who would be not the creative visionaries who would be wanting to change things. The best McDonald's franchise buyer is a farmer, not an entrepreneur who's been creating things their whole life. Somebody who follows step-by-step instructions. Two very different
Yep.
types of entrepreneurs. And so now that you know you're targeting those kinds of people, that would be the best fit, have the best success. You can tailor your marketing specifically to them. You can use same terminology or step by step approach terminology instead of new create. And so like you can see how those two different messages would turn off the visionary and turn on the farmer, as opposed to if you were talking about creation or newness and having to envision a reality that's not here yet. It would turn off the farmer and off and on the entrepreneur, like the visionary kind of entrepreneur. So there is two different kinds of marketing that you can take. And for this, it's definitely the language you want to be using is the step-by-step approach. You follow A, B, and C, and you will have the success. It's proven by all of these people, by myself included. And if you want this and you're willing to follow the step-by-step instructions, then you can join. As opposed to everybody
Yeah.
else, not for you. So then there's a
And
power to that, the turning away too.
yeah. And if you're looking to fast track, it's like, because I'll never say to somebody, I mean, I'll use even an online business manager as an example. Like that's OBM is a very common term now in the online space, right? Like a lot of people, have heard of an OBM or they talk about OBMs or whatever. That doesn't mean that, I don't look at that and say, oh my gosh, every OBM out there should be a certified OBM, right?
Yeah.
Like we do hold a certain standard for a certified OBM and what it means. And there absolutely is confusion a little bit out there where people essentially think an OBM is a glorified VA. And it's not, it's very much a management role. But, to look at somebody and be like, well, every single person out there should be certified or else kind of thing. It's like, well, no, some people
Yeah.
will figure it out on their own, do their own thing, etc. But for those who want to fast track, who want to skip that whole let me try this, let me try that, etc. And even in today's world, like but by all means too, like if you're looking to create a business, if you're looking to do a side gig, great, hit the ground running, right? If you're looking to turn something into like a full-time income for you and or your family in some way, okay, great, let's fast track that. Like I don't want people to have to spend the amount of time that I spent
Right.
fussing around trying to
Mhm.
create and believe me, there's nothing wrong with it, right? But it's like that creative process takes a
Pain in the
lot.
ass. A lot of failure, a
It's
lot
a
of
pain in the
pain.
ass.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. So they're skipping the troll under the bridge by going over the bridge
Yeah.
instead of having to go down the valley. And so
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, depends on the type of
And to
person.
know that something works too. Like that's the other
Yes,
part of it
yeah, the
is,
certainty is important for those types of people too. They're
well, and
more risk averse as opposed to somebody like us, where it's like, I love the chaos. I'll step into it because I just want to see what
yeah,
happens. Whereas a lot of
yeah,
people aren't wired like that. Evolutionarily speaking, it's not a good evolutionary strategy most of the time because a lot of the time you get eaten by a lion or a bear underneath the bridge in the valley, you know? And so it's safer, and a lot of people are wired for that safety, that certainty. And you're tapping into that
yep,
too. There's a lot of primal aspects too, the community, the implementation, the certainty and safety behind it as well. It's fascinating. So
yeah.
what's the question? Yeah, go
One of
ahead.
the biggest, just to add on that piece too, really quick, like one of the biggest outcomes or one of the biggest pieces of value that people get coming through our program, and we recognize this over time, is confidence. They are coming out the other end feeling confident in
Mm,
what they're
mm,
doing now, right? Like knowing, oh, okay, yes, this is what I'm doing. This is what it's about. I know I can do it because they've had the experience of the practice and the testing and so on. And so, yeah, that uncertainty piece that you're talking about, that's a biggie. Because how often does uncertainty hold us back? Maybe not you or I if we're pretty entrepreneur, whatever. We like the chaos. I like the chaos a bit too. So I get that.
mm.
Um, But just like how often does uncertainty, like, well, I don't know for sure what I'm doing, or how do I know if this is going to work, or oh my gosh, what if this happens, or
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
is such a key point, is just uncertainty can really get in the way.
How do you market your program, your certification of for OBMs, for example? What's your
Yeah.
sales process look like so we can model it with our
Uh,
certification if we choose to go this route?
mainly for me, it's mainly through my licensed trainers at this point,
Ah, interesting. I
right?
love it.
So
Mm,
yeah, so that was part of the evolution of my certification. Was for the first 8 years, I taught the training directly, right? So
yeah.
I taught the
Mm.
training, me and my team or whatever, right? We did the sales, we did all the marketing, we did all the launches, etc. People came in, I led the training. But when I, again, frankly, I got a little tired of leading the training all the time. I back in 2018 is when I shifted the model to licensed trainers. So they are independent trainers. They're licensed to teach the certified OBM training, like that. We give
You're
them the entire
certified to
training.
to certify. Yes.
Basically, yeah,
It's an
they're
affiliate model. Instead
they
of making one sale, you sell one person who sells potentially 1,000 people. So they do
yeah,
the marketing for you, and you create an extra
yeah.
business in between there. Is it fast? I love that model. That's brilliant what you did.
Yeah, and that's worked out. So, I mean, in that case, they lead the training. Because we have an association structure model, which again is not necessary to do a certification, but we built ours that way. People take the training from one of our licensed trainers, they come to the association to get certified. And that's where the renewal continues too, right? So they pay every year to maintain their
Yeah.
membership in the association, which maintains their certification status along with other benefits and stuff they get out of that.
Another thing you're tapping into is the need for prestige. The same reason why somebody would go to school for 12 years to be a doctor, even if they don't like what they're in medical school for, just because they want to have that title. And you're giving people
Yep.
titles too. What about to answer the question of marketing? We'll wrap it up with this. How are the people that have licensed the ability to certify others? How are they getting people in their certification program?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's sort of your standard online marketing world, like through social media, through launching, through referral partners and such. Yeah, yeah. I don't know that there's anything overly uh, different or exciting per se that they're
Okay,
doing
okay. Because
around
where
that.
my mind goes with that is you can structure a webinar one time that sells the
Yep.
certification, and then they use the webinar, either they present it or just
Oh,
use
yeah,
their version of it, and then just distribute
yeah,
it,
they
and
have
then
some
they're that
resources and
middleman.
such from us. But part of it is too, and again, this maybe is going down a bit of a rabbit hole, but you also need to be careful that part of what tips a license into a license into a franchise is if you're dictating how they sell, right? So
Interesting.
this is
Hmm.
in the States, I'm not even in the States, I live in Canada, but in
Me
the
too.
US, majority of my clients are you in Canada too? High
Yeah,
five.
yeah.
Um, the most of my clients are American, they're US based, but like this varies from like state to state and all of that. And nor am I a lawyer to understand these things in depth. But part of it's also being aware of like, yes, we want to give people skills and resources and so on, but we also can't dictate too strongly how they market, what they're using in their marketing, how they're showing up, et cetera. Because
Hmm.
if that gets determined to tip into franchise and not a license, then you can get yourself in some trouble around that too. So our licensed trainers, like they have resources, they have access to webinars and tools and assets and stuff that
Oh
we've
yeah.
created over the years. But they still have freedom to do it their way too.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Why not a franchise? Well, I still don't understand what are the legal ramifications as opposed to running a franchise as opposed to a certification?
Fran, again, I'm going to say this not being a lawyer and not
Sure.
understanding the intricacies, but franchises essentially have a lot more rules around them,
Why?
right?
Do you know
Of
why?
why?
Hmm.
Why is because people got screwed over years ago and they built franchise law around it, right? So and I'm talking like, like 50, 60, however many years ago, where people would sell, these business opportunities and they weren't really business opportunities and so on. So like, or people were getting scammed and screwed over. So that's kind of like franchise law was birthed out of
Hmm.
that. It all fits under the category of internet, IP attorneys. So any intellectual property attorney and such. Um, but there's a lot more rules around franchises for sure. And again, it varies it depends very much what part of the world you're in, right? Like what state do you live in, or what Canada, I don't know a lot about it, but Canada's a little looser with certain things. But part of
That's
that is
surprising.
really,
I'm surprised it's
yeah.
looser. So, at least we're looser in something. I mean, damn.
Well, and it's so, I mean, it really, and if somebody wants to go the franchise route, they can, but there's a lot more costs, there's a lot more rules, there's a lot more
Red
whatever
tape.
that comes
Yeah.
into play
Who
with
likes
that. So, I
that?
mean, there
Yeah.
is something to be said for like, hey, do I want to go licensing, certification route, or do I want to go franchising? Like, there might be options either way. Um, but I mean, for me, I don't like a lot of rules, and I don't like having to like, feeling like restricted by
Yeah.
something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's not something, we've ever explored in depth, but, attorneys and such I've talked to about this, it really does kind of boil down to the control. Like, how much control do you have over the people? Like you mentioned the McDonald's example, like that's control.
Yeah.
Here's how you cook the burger. It's on the thing for 32 seconds or whatever it is. Like that's what a franchise is that here's how you show up, here's how you're allowed to market, here's what you're not allowed to do, here's your ad you can use, here's that, like
Yeah.
all of that stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
gets laid out in a very, very structured and detailed way, which of course can be valuable for folks for sure. But yeah, it's just an awareness to have around that. Like at the end of the day, anybody creating a certification or licensing program needs to have an attorney and needs to get their legal ducks in a row around it for sure. Because if you don't, that opens up a whole other, can of worms potentially down the road.
Right on. Okay, I love it, man. I think we walked through a lot of pretty much. I love the idea of transforming a course into a licensing program or one of
Yeah,
these instead of just a course, even with a community, adding this prestige to it, the title that they get, the identity that they step into, as opposed to just
yes,
the information and hoping they go through it, not really caring what the result is other than how much you get paid at the end of the day, which is unfortunately what a lot of the course creators in the entrepreneurial online space are like right now because there's no
yeah,
accountability. They don't, there's no brand name that they have to hold accountable or to be held accountable of their students, I guess you'd call them, succeeding because they're not
yeah,
certified as X, under your brand. And so
yeah,
there's more responsibility to it, but I like the opportunity in
totally.
it too. So it's beautiful. Tina, what else do you have to add before we kick this off, or are we good to go?
No, I think I just enjoyed this conversation, and I love being able to plant that seed for people around the opportunities of certification and licensing. Like, even if it's not a now thing, if anybody's in the, oh, I'm just kind of developing my framework, or I'm just starting to get into
Yes.
this and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
really know what it is yet, or I got to go out and prove it. I need to, I'm in that proof of, I'm validating the methodology stage. Like, to even have that kind of in the back of your mind as an option, because again, it's not everybody's thing, it's not for everybody, that's great. But it is a really cool option, I think, especially as we continue to grow and expand in different ways and look at ways to really impact people
Yes.
more. Because I think, to your point too, Kyle, it's like, somebody buys a training and 4% of people complete it. Well, did we actually impact that person? I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't think that's an impact. I mean, it is an impact of sorts, but not
A financial
the impact.
impact, maybe negatively, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's that, which is fine too. There's nothing wrong with the money side. But versus, again, when I look at certification as an empowerment model, it's like I'm empowering someone to go and take this thing I've created and for them to utilize it themselves to then create their own livelihood or their own income or their own business or expand how they serve clients or whatever it is. Like that, and the path to that through certification is much more laid out than it is in just kind of
Mm,
regular training and
mm.
such too. Yeah.
Gives you something to shoot for. There's a target involved as opposed to an open-ended, I'll do this, but there's not really a solidified target you're aiming for, which is important.
Yep.
Again, primal reasons for that too. You're tapping into all kinds of deeply rooted psychological principles that make this a viable option for a lot of people. So thank you for
Yep.
sharing. It's interesting hearing all of your points, and I think you have a lot of valid, like I said, psychological principles driving the success with this. How do people get in contact with you if they want to move forward with doing it with you as opposed to trying to figure it out on their own?
Yeah. TinaForsyth.com is my main website. You'll find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube under Tina Forsyth. Not so much on Instagram or anything like that.
Not on
But yeah,
TikTok.
my website, yeah, not too much on that side, but just,
Yeah.
yeah, like reach out to me through my website or find me on social media. I'd love to connect.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and we'll keep in touch. I appreciate it. Seriously.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Kyle.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that podcast episode. And if you want to get a free copy of my book, go to kylesbook.com and you can get a copy there. I'll talk with you soon.